Welcome to technically video 4, but topic 2 of the How to MMD series. This time we're going into more of what's going on behind the scenes as far as MMD is concerned. So this time, instead of actually going into MMD itself, we're going into our alternative program, which is PMXEditor. So since I've got the 64-bit version, I just tend to use 64-bit. 32-bit, I believe, also comes with it. Feel free to use whatever it was you downloaded, because that's what was working on your computer. And it may take a second to load. I like this new one that has this little image when it's loading. The old ones didn't have that. So, as you will probably see, two windows pop up. We have this window, which means very little to you right now, and this window, which probably still means very little to you right now. So first thing we want to do is File, Open. This is going to open our models. These models are going to show us what happens with a model sort of in the background with MMD that you don't know is going on. So let's pick, I don't know, my favorite, or I say my favorite, one of my favorites, which is good old Altair. Okay, so now this means a little bit more to you, right? This obviously has information about it. This one has a lot going on, but allows you to see it. It's got the same controls as MMD, so right click, select, middle mouse, when you click it, it pans, when you roll it, it scrolls in and out. Right click allows you to rotate around models. So that's, basics of that. I won't go too much in depth as far as this program is concerned, but just some important things to note. First of all, your model, how it works is, if we can go to wireframe, you see how all of these come together at certain points? Those points are called vertices. You can see those points when I click them. So we will go back into wireframe mode, and one right here, one right here, one right here, one right here, all the way around. This program allows you to see through things, which can be good and can be bad. There's ways to avoid problems with that. But for the most part, vertices are how your model is built in 3D space. There is obviously edge flow, or there's words. I can think of words. Hold on, words. Basically, there is a certain science and an art to how these things are connected and how many you have. For, let's say, this leg obviously has a bunch of circles, and the skirt has circles, but it has, let's say, few down here, but you get up here and they get a whole lot denser. The hair has a ton of them. So you can see some things are dense, some things are less dense, and it just depends on what kind of a surface you're making. So like a lot around the nose, a lot around the mouth, plenty around the eyes. I guess it's just called edge flow. I can't really think of what it's called right now. It has to do with land and how high up things are. Oh, and I'm gonna kick myself when I think of it too. Not terraforming, but that other word. Anyway, but yeah, so how things are organized in terms of vertices can be important, but that's more of an advanced topic if you're making your own. All you need to know is that the vertices are how the model fills 3D space. Then there are faces, which probably don't want to be in wire mode when you see that, but you have to have both selected. Sorry, small things that I forget. You have to have both selected to actually select the faces. The faces are the space in between vertices. So if I pick this square, it will show me those two faces. Boom, in red. We can turn that off so we can see it better. Boom. 4 vertices, 2 faces, because there's one right there and 2 right there. So if I was able to just pick 3 of these vertices, boom, just the one face. The face is sort of like, how do you know what you can see through, like down here, because they're not connected to each other, so there's just a hole. And, you know, there's exceptions to that. You can make a transparent thing, but basically faces are solid pieces, and vertices are kind of the edges of those solid pieces. Even though, yeah, so here's the easiest way to put it. Vertice equals dot. Edge equals line between dots. Face equals plane between, let's say, 3 or more dots. Right? So if you want to, and that's true of every program ever. If you want to edit an edge, you'll edit, and you can't really edit edges and that kind of stuff in MMD situations. But in other programs, you can just edit the edge and move it around, or you can edit the face as a whole and do stuff with it. But really, in this, you're just going to work with vertices. So we can, you know, move it around. Whee! You can kind of get the gist of what's going on here, because this is how it fills 3D spaces, because it finds the vertices and it connects them. So that's what that is. Cool. Alright, so these two are about the 3D space organization of the model. Again, you can kind of have a simple idea of that. It's very intuitive, like her face is here, therefore there are vertices in that shape of her face. There's also, while those tell you how the model fills 3D space, there's also like how it moves, which is separate. That is basically the bones. The bones themselves are just organized as, how would you put it? A simple idea of how stuff is organized. Like you have a spine, but a spine can be just, let's say, 1, 2 bones. And you got one for the neck and one for the head, let's say, and you got like a lower back that kind of extends into the hip. Maybe point it downwards, because that's kind of how things are done. Not really a better way to explain that right now. But you've got a bunch of bones in the hair, showing how that would move. And basically, the more bones you have in a structure, let's say like hair or a skirt, the more it flows. Or the smoother it flows, probably a better way of putting it. So in an arm, you're not going to have a total like 50 bones in an arm, because that's just not realistic, right? People have the upper arm moves and the lower arm moves, even though it's got 2 technical bones, it moves all at once. So one for the upper arm, one for the forearm, one for the hand itself, and then the finger has 3 pieces. So you've got obviously the knuckle. For the thumb it can have 2, honestly. For the thumb it can have 2. But you can have from the knuckle to the first joint, from the first joint to the second joint, from the second joint to the tip of your finger, which can be shown here. So from roughly the knuckle to this first joint, from this first joint to, I need to get rid of that, from this first joint to the second joint, from the second joint to the tip. So you've got basically how things move because of that. You've also got twist bones sometimes, which just, again, twist the arm about, you know, its axis, let's say. So if this is its axis, you've got it. You can twist this by itself, but sometimes you get weird stuff. So you can designate specific bones for twisting along the bone you're dealing with that you actually want to twist. So that's an example of one right there. This technically twists around the elbow, but it's set between the upper arm and the lower arm so that you get kind of a good one, a good twist. And that's, I don't know, there's certain places to put it that people have put it who are just good at doing this. As far as why it works, you'd have to ask one of them. I just know you do it because it works. So it gets you that natural twisting motion you want to see, instead of like, hey, let me turn my arm inside out, you know. So yeah, technically making the bones is one thing, and then attaching the bones to the vertices, which actually, because you can have, how should I do this? We're going to do something crazy and then we're not going to save it, so this is going to be fun. I have this bone right here, and if I go to the bone tab, we talked about vertices, you almost never use this tab as far as I'm concerned. Faces, you actually never use this tab as far as I'm concerned. Materials we'll talk about later. You always use that one pretty much. Bones you use pretty frequently as well. So we'll go to the bone tab and we can click the bone and then scroll in here and we will see highlighted the bone that we have chosen. So I'm trying to pick, I'm trying to pick just that one. There we go. And then I can do vice versa. I can click a bone here and then see it highlighted here. If I'm looking very carefully, there we are, right here in red. That was hard to find. Anyway, side notes. Fun stuff about the program, but we want this bone. Now I'm going to skin this. It's called skinning in some programs, and this one is called weighting. What do I want to do? I want to... Ooh. That's convoluted. Sorry, it's bleeding over into the other screens. That's why I'm looking over here and looking over here at the same time. I just need to go to weight mode really. So W is for weight. I've already clicked the bone I want to weight it to. This is kind of advanced, so don't worry about what I'm doing. Just know that this is not something you want to do unless you know what you're doing. Because guess what? I'm about to screw things up like crazy. But I know what I'm doing, and I'm doing it on purpose to show you something that happens. Okay, boom. Nailed it. So this is going to be horrible. The difference between having bones and actually having bones is that if you just make these bones, right, they don't do anything for you. Let's go to the transform menu where I can actually move stuff. I'd hate that thing. I think I prefer this one actually, but so if I click on this, it's the parent of everything. It's quite literally like the supreme bone. I've got everything weighted to it, so you know, if I move this bone, it does what it's supposed to. It moves the model around. If I want to rotate it, you know, that's fine. So that's all good, right? Nothing wrong with that. But see, here's the kicker. Let's say I want to move the shoulder, right? That's not clicked on the shoulder. I want to move this shoulder. It's still not clicked on it. There are two versions of the shoulder, but it makes it very hard to click on the correct one when it is being a jerk. If I just go with that one. Hoi, 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 hoi. Nope, not giving it to me. Why is it like this? That's the one. There we go. Just have to click it in the list. So I have this bone, right? But it is not connected to the model. So when I move it, the bones move fine, but the model doesn't. That's what skinning is about, aka weighting. In MMD it's called weighting. But like I said, in other programs like Blender or let's say Autodesk Maya, it's called skinning. So you can make the bones, which will determine how it moves, but that does not mean the bones are attached to your actual model. So that's what weighting is for. W-E-I-G-H-T-I-N-G. So no matter what I do with this, the model is not attached to these, so it's not going to affect anything. So you get a piece of garbage, right? So you have to go through and weight things. There are plugins for that. Whoops. Maybe it's in here. Yeah, there are plugins for how to do good weighting. Weight copy usually is a good one, but that's a different lesson for a different day. We're talking about advanced and additional topics in previous videos, that would be one of them. So now I'm going to File, Open without saving. Are you sure you want to quit? Yes, I absolutely want to quit because heck no. I'll just go into this one. It's her, but I took off the hat because I had a Chica video which the hat comes off. So why not? Still adorable. So that's sort of the next step is you have the vertices, you have the faces. So like you have your 3D model. Then you make the bones, which shows how the model is supposed to move. Then you attach the bones to the model through weighting, and again, aka skinning. If you're familiar with that or other programs, then that's what I'm talking about when I say weighting. And if you're not, just know that in other programs it'll be called skinning instead. Next thing, so the combination of bones and skinning is how your model actually moves. The bones are the ones that are told to move, but based on how you skinned it is how the 3D model will respond to those bones. So let's do something fun. I wasn't planning on doing this, but you know what? Let's go crazy. Let's do something crazy. I'm feeling a little adventurous. So I'm going to press this. Actually, let me do that. That's actually, I want to use some of the main bones that everybody uses, because that's going to make this awful. And I love it. I love to make things awful. Okay, let's pick that one. Does that pop in? Yes, it does. Sweet. Gonna go 50%. Let's go with 50%. Yeah, watch him. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Okay, sweet. Good. Now I'm gonna pick, I don't know. I'll pick the right arm. Yeah. Let's go 75%. Okay, that'll be enough damage. File. Save as, because I am not about to overwrite my model. Although, I'll talk about that later. Altair, no hat. Bad. Okay, cool. So if your model is perfect, except it's skinned poorly, and by poorly I mean this is gonna suck. Da, 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 da. Where are my models? There we go. Altair. Altair, bad. Boom. Oh, it's thinking. Boom. Okay. So, you know, that's weird, right? Oh, it gets so much worse. Trust me. Let's just load in a motion. Let's do some dance. What did we do? We had dope last time, but let's do something you may or may not be familiar with. I did next level recently. Sure, number 1. I'll pop in the music too, just to make it eventful. Nope, not that music. Nope. And, whoops, gotta be in the camera for the camera to load. Ooh, it already looks beautiful, doesn't it? It's already looking fine. Alright, watch this. Ooh, that's loud. We won't watch this for forever, but we'll watch it for a while. See? It's horrible, isn't it? That is absolutely disastrous. That's enough. That's plenty. You see how bad things get when they're not skinned properly. So everything is fine, except it's just not skinned very well. That's what happens. So in case you're wondering, why should I care about weighting? That's a very difficult and very important thing to do right. Very, very difficult. Anyway, so did I already have this open? Yeah, sure enough, I did not close it. Well, then I'm opening a new one for no reason. Sweet. There we go, boom. And I'll just close this one. So fun fact, you can close the display without closing the program, but if you close this window, it will close both windows. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, first is making the actual physical thing, then is making the bones for it, then is attaching the bones to the physical thing properly. There's also morphs. Morphs are just, let's say, the facial motions. So blinking, you have like just the mouth movements, so like ah, ee, ooh, eh, oh. Of course, the detection is rough on mine, but you know what? You get the idea. You can wink, so you can have one eye blinking and one eye not blinking. You can have a few different blinks so that they look differently. For example, I happen to know that this model does. See, look at that. Isn't that awful? Okay. But her face is fine, I think, so I'm not going to worry about it. Come on, there we go. So like we got this one, which is just nothing very much. Boom, wink. But we also have, so this one, let me turn off the bones because they get in the way. It's a fair blink, like boom. But I think this is different. Yeah, see, so has a very happy look to it. Whereas this blink, just kind of normal. So yeah, so you can have a few different blinks. Where were we? There we go, blink. They won't activate unless they're under the right name. So this model has them under 2 different names, but there's also good old small pupils, and you can, obviously it's a slider, so you can go from, you can pick somewhere in the middle too. You know, you can make the edge of the eyes bigger, get whatever kind of look you're looking for. What else we got? Let's go further down. So here's our ooh. There we go. Ooh. Typically there's a smiling one. So yeah, just lots of them, pretty much. And these kinds of things are going to be your morphs, your so-called morphs. Display is what shows up in the display pane in MMD, which would be more helpful if I had MMD open, wouldn't it? So that you could see a side-by-side comparison. Forethought, I have none. So this right here is your display pane. Especially emphasis on the pane aspect. Not really, but you'll see why I say that in a second. So this model was created by a Japanese person. Since I am using an English version of the MMD, it is locating the English names. Unfortunately, all of these say null. Why do they say null? Well, if we go into the model, or the exact identical version of the model, except it was removed the hat, you'll notice that these bones don't have an English name. Pretty much none of them have an English name. And there are over 600. So that is why when we go here, we see over 600 of these have a null name. But center was named. Center and groove were properly named. Isn't that nice? But yeah, so they do have, and morphs too will have, if there's an English name, it will load it. If there's not, it won't. So you need to have the Japanese names because that's what the motions are going to attach to. But it's helpful if you put English names, honestly, just because you'll be able to see what you're doing. And I can show you an example of that later. But the display pane shows our sections, so let's see if this will line up properly. Not really. Root is just our master right here. Display, IK, OP, is its own section, which does not appear here because it's not something you can change. Facial motions. Again, these were all morphs. That is this one right here. You can load them in here, and add them. Although I'm pretty sure we have most of all of them already in there. I guess I could change some of these, but I don't know if it's really that important. They exist, and that's what matters. Then we have, let's stay on this one. Then we have our center section, which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-ish on there. And our center section has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those last 3 have to do with our sword. But center is here, and you will see center, so it's there. Groove, although it's not called groove in here, it's called center again. Which is kind of dumb, but, you know, whatever. Oh, it's because all of these are named center. Yeah, this one's named groove. This is just the name for this. Makes sense. And there's an edge display and then 3 for the swords, which are invisible normally, but we can display those if we want to. The take home is display pane affects this. IK, upper body stuff, fingers, legs, not really important. It's an unusual section, but okay. Hair. Then we have, after we get our display pane set up properly, we have rigid bodies. Rigid bodies are, let's make this easier to see. Basically these. You will see kind of these capsule-shaped things around in the body, kind of a circle in the head. You got these capsules in the hair, which are pretty well spaced out, but squares in the skirt. So when we go here, it will look a little different. But if I select rigid bodies, capsules in the hair, circle in the head, capsules in the body, and squares in the skirt, all in all the same places. Rigid bodies are the physics, so like, let me pull up the section. It's got non-collision groups which just say, hey, this is what can slide through each other without actually, hitting each other in that sense. You've got settings for all of these, but for the most part, these are standard. Radius and height just affects how big these things are, and there's a purpose to that, but again, advanced topics for later, if they're desired. Just know that the physics have their own section. Joints are related to rigid bodies. It's sort of about like how these bend. So I said, more bones equals more fluid movement. That's part of the equation, but also the more bones rigid bodies are sort of one-to-one with bones. You don't have to with like feet and stuff if they're not going to collide with anything naturally, but hair is going to interact with the clothing, and the clothing is going to interact with the body. You don't want the arm to just, go right through the sleeve, do you? No, because it doesn't happen. You don't want sometimes you want your hair to slide through things because there's a lot, and it's hard to keep getting it hit on things, but basically you want your hair to interact with your body so that it doesn't suddenly go through it. See if mine still can. Mine for a while did. I think I fixed that already, but mine for a while would go through my chest, and that was not exactly desirable, so we stopped that. But yeah, so rigid bodies are aligned with the bones, and I will show you that. See, there's one, we'll just do it by sets. One for this set, one for this set, one for the head. We've got some for these bones over here. The skirt has, I don't know if you can really tell, but 1 square per bone and each layer. And then joints are how these rigid bodies are connected. So it gets kind of complicated with skirts because you have one for side to side and you have one for up and down. But mainly skirts and hair are the ones that have joints. The body doesn't, because the body doesn't need to worry about it. The bones, again, control the actual flow, let's say. And the body doesn't need rigid bodies for, hey, I'm interacting with something. The body just has it in case something else reacts with it. Like, again, you don't want your hair to flow through your arm, so your arm has to have a rigid body, but your hair is going to have the joints which make it more fluid and which control how it goes. So your body has it just so that there's something to interact with, but the hair is the one that actually needs the bones, joints, and such, and rigid bodies. It probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense at this point, but again, I can go into more detail if people are trying to set up their own. I'm just making this video so that you know what's going on behind the scenes. And then, yeah, if you want to learn how to like make these yourself, then that would be a follow-up video, more advanced video on how to make these, and you'll get more understanding as far as why things are done the way they are. But yeah, so this is what's going on in MMD behind all the fun and action, is that this is your display pane and you can set that manually. The null is just because there is no English name, so it just counts from 1 to whatever your last one is. Rigid bodies tell what not to just suddenly pop through what else. So in this case, let me undo that. In this case, the hair doesn't really clip through the arm because the arm has this rigid body and the hair has this one, and they're not allowed to go through each other. But the hair can go through the hair because, I mean, first of all, you couldn't really tell. Second of all, it's all hair, so what does it matter in the end? The bones are what the motion's actually attached to. So, you know, when you see that, let's say this moves at frame, I don't know, 30, it suddenly just goes over here. It's not really a good example, is it? But it is now. So when these frames are, you know, you load a motion, let's say, let's load this one. It's just going to be this because it's easy to see quickly. The reason these are attaching to the bones, to the model correctly, is because the model has all the right bones and names for the bones. If I picked, oh, I don't know. Is there a model I have that I know is just not right? I don't think so. Actually, you know what? Yes, I have some four-legged models, and they are definitely not going to be the same as a human. So, Mechazoids, heck yeah. What do we want to pick? Let's pick a red horn. Why not? They're adorable, right? We will just hide her. Oops. And again, this is part of the display section as a, you know, fun fact. So I can choose to not display her. Probably want to zoom the camera out like crazy so that I can catch all of this glory on camera without having it reset to super close every time I move things. So yeah, let's watch next level on this four-legged creature that is set up entirely different from a human. Oh, I don't have the music playing. The music makes things more interesting, so I want it. There we go. So it has a lot of the same bone names, right? Right leg, left leg, that kind of thing. I'm actually impressed it has the mouth motions too. I severely underestimated how this was. This is great, actually. Okay, I'm going to stop because I'm actually being entertained by that. Let me find something that's definitely wrong. I totally expected that to be wrong, but it wasn't. And now I'm really pleased. I don't know. Cars? No. I want something that is definitely not named the way those are named. Problem is, this is a very united community. We name things properly. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. Gosh, this is hard. Probably a Sonic model. I can probably choose that. Let's go with, I don't know, Metal Sonic, I guess. I'll go with the second. So see, I edited my information. Da-da-da-da-da, rigged, changed, do all these things. Cool. We're gonna, let me just, one button on this, because there is no point. But I'm on the camera. That's the wrong model. That's the wrong model. So, as you notice, these tend to have more of their names, right? Shoulder, proper names, because that's in the English section. Even though the names are in Japanese, it's in the English section of the PMXEditor. So they put the Japanese names both here and here. And so you can see both when they load up in here. Fun fact. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to put it all in English and in Japanese and do all that translation. Although there are translation guides out there for you. But as long as it's in the English section, it will load. But if we play this, you can see his legs are kind of in him because he's the wrong height for this. So the bones load because they're named properly. But not everything is working properly because he's actually a different height. So there's some customization to this. But as long as the bones are named to the right thing, it will apply. And as long as the bones actually work, they will do what they're supposed to. And as long as it's skinned correctly, it will move all as one instead of flying all the way around like a cursed banshee. Whee! Anyway. And if you have sliders, like, let me see. What does this do? Oh, I need to do that from. Nope, wrong button. There are lots of delete buttons out there. That's the one I wanted. So, oh, he's not curling up the way he's supposed to. Maybe that was a problem with number 2 that number 1 had correct. That's probably a thing I fixed with that I had right with number 1 and it broke it with number 2. Yep, there he is. So, morph number 1, put him here. Morph number 2 generated this prism, which I can turn off the axis so you can see the whole thing. Morph number 3 spun it. Oh, just turned him shiny purple for no good reason. Why did I do that anyway? And then all I had to do other was probably the shield. Let me spin that. Yep, there we go. Do. So yeah, you too can learn this power. And if I zero it out, it will not spin. Voila. And all of that is done in here. There are ways to set up spinning bones that I actually learned from the Zafkiel model for Tokizaki Kudumi. But that, again, is another lesson for a different day. But now you see how things are going on, right? So I rotate a certain bone, it does a thing. You sort of knew about that, but collisions have to do with the rigid bodies, how a bone bends, how it makes the model move. Just again, some knowledge in the background. So especially if you see something go wrong, like our crazy bad Altair. Oh, another thing I can show you actually, since we're talking about it. Was this the bad Altair? Was this was probably the okay Altair. Actually, we'll leave it. We'll go ahead and get rid of Metal Sonic, because why not? Let's say, just for fun, that I have this model that I hid. Right. You with me? Then I have this other model that I want to use. Oh, let's pick, you know, this one. Boom. Isn't that nice? What the frick is going on? Maybe if I just move it forward, it'll be fine. That's not even moving the right thing. Maybe if I have a clue about life. If I move the model forward, well now it's... Well, what in the heck is going on, guys? Interference. Interference from what? From my other model's physics is interfering with this model's physics. So even though she's not visible, she is interfering. I actually had that pop up in a previous video and I decided not to fix it. Because I caught it when I caught it pretty late in the process, and so I was like, not worth it. But yeah, so when you see crazy movement like this, it can be from the physics. When you see piecemealed movement, it's probably that it wasn't attached to the model correctly. When the model looks bad, the vertices need to be fixed. And if the model just, the middle of its forearm starts bending, maybe the bones aren't where they are supposed to be. So there's a lot to a model. That's kind of all that this level 2 was supposed to do, is kind of give you an introduction to that. Like, there's a lot going on with the model that's kind of behind the scenes. But yeah, so that's kind of your introduction behind the curtain. And again, if we want a separate video series on how to actually deal with stuff, then I can do that. We can do that. So yeah, that was sort of level 2. Now you have some understanding about stuff. And why that's level 2, that's probably a good thing to answer while we're here. Why is this level 2 instead of teaching how to do something in MMD? Why is this level 2? First of all, I mean, I kind of told you this in previous videos, right, in this series, but if you have problems, just Google it. Because you can always find, well, I say always. For better or worse, it may be more or less difficult to find the answer, but you can usually find an answer to whatever problems you have in MMD by Googling it. With this kind of introduction behind the curtain, and you've seen a few specific problems when things aren't set up right, you have a better sense of what's going on, but not necessarily, how do I fix it? And so this is sort of foundational to any troubleshooting you want to do with your own models if something does go wrong. If you're Googling, if you Google, hey, my model doesn't move right, then there's going to be a million things you don't need pop up. But if you say, how do I skin my model correctly? Or how do I, how should joints be set up? Then you're going to get things that are more specific to what your problem is. And so having a look behind what does what will help you a lot in troubleshooting, and will be a good foundation for anything you want to make for yourself in the future. So that's kind of why this was level 2, was not only to understand MMD, but once you understand what does what in that sense, like say you actually wanted to load a model in and where are we going? I don't know, let's pick a random. Cool. Boom. Oh, I want to turn that off. Go away. We have this nice model. Very simple, right? Arms, legs, things that move the entire body all at once so that you can position it 2 eyes, you know. There's no real hair bones here because it doesn't matter. There's probably hair physics. Yeah, so they put physics to it so it won't just clip through the body. But there's no bones because its movement doesn't really matter. It's just going to flop all around. But guess what? Ponytails kind of do that. There are no bones for it, but there's probably physics. Yep, there you go. Physics is there. That's how that works. So yeah. So you can see what all the model's set up to move around in a very basic way. But we've got lower body stuff, upper body stuff, eyes, and so, you know, if something isn't named, now you know where to go to name it. Just go right in here, boom, and fix the naming in the English section. Just one, boom, 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 boom. Really, you don't want to go into the display. For naming, you want to be in here. Boom, 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 boom. And then the display pane, like if something isn't listed, like, oh, I know my model has, you know, an extra bone in the right hand, but I don't see it when I'm trying to go through here. That's definitely happened, right? Not so much, you know, right hand stuff, but let's say I've got a facial movement that I know the model has, but I just can't pick it. Or I have a bone, like I see this bone right here, right? I see it, but let's say it's not popping up here. How do I interact with it? Well, it's kind of hard to deal with when you have stuff moving that you can't visualize. I'm trying to think which one it is now that has that. I have a few models where that's exactly what's going on. It's like you can load a motion and it has those bones, but those bones are not in the display pane, so you cannot manually go back and deal with those. Kind of frustrating. Maybe it's the Yang model, actually. Having said that, it may have come up in... Oh, but I don't know which Yang model it is. Let's go with this one. Do. Even if it's not this one, I'm just going to give up. But I've had some where... No, it's not this one. Where the... You know, I load a motion and it moves correctly, but then it's like, oh, the timing's kind of off with the music, so let me just shift this. Well, any bones that were not in the display pane for me to edit, I couldn't shift. So I had to actually find a way to get them into the display pane. Again, boom. Like, hey, I don't have this bone. Well, let me just go in here, click it, and add it. And in this one, not all her facial movements are in there. I can go back in, click it, add it, and boom. Now when I load it, it will be right there. So yeah, just things to know about. The last topic, which is by far probably going to be the one you use the most, is this material section. Soft body you probably won't use because it's a very new section and no one really knows or cares why it exists, except the person who made it. So let me get out of this for a second because it doesn't really matter anymore. This material section has to do with the textures, which is a very big deal because if I were to go into her, let's say this one. First of all, she has an actual texture file that it loads. Textures, spheres, which kind of affect how the light and how the texture, like the texture file interacts with how the texture actually looks and fits on her face, and you can edit that with some of the tools in here. The sphere has more to do with how light interacts with her face, like how, not how shiny it is, right, but just the distribution of the lighting. It's really hard for me to explain that in more detail at this point, but the sphere is more about how the light affects it. You can use a multiplication factor or a addition factor, or you can make sub-texture things going on. Double siding, that kind of stuff. You can do a lot with this. But the big deal is basically, you know, let's make it bright freaking, or not bright, but let's make it green. Boom. So you may be wondering, why on earth would I care? Well, for this model, you really don't. There's no point. No worries. Although, if you wanted a model with a, that green mask on their face, you've got it. But what you will encounter, almost guaranteed, at some point in your life, in this business, is, see the bottom one? Probably. Boom. Good old blank GU. That's not GU. I mean, it's supposed to be GU, right? But it's not. So why? Well, let's go to materials. It's looking for this file. B underline UV face. July 23rd, 2020. Cool, interesting. I don't see anything when I pop this up. Let's open it up. Texture file, that exists. Oh no, the names are scrambled. So that's what you're going to run into. The names were in Japanese, and when you put them on a non-Japanese computer, sometimes the names get scrambled. I mean, pretty much always the names get scrambled. And so you'll get a blank model. So you'll have to go one by one, track down which one this is. Which really isn't hard, right? It has BUV, so all of that's English, right? It has face, which is not like 5 kanji, it's just 1. So this isn't going to be a long piece that got screwed up. And then 2020, July 23rd, PNG. Okay, you know what? That's... So we go in, okay, it's in the texture folder, right? So we're looking for B. BUV, right? July 23rd. But it has this thing. Well, this thing means there's another kanji, but we didn't have another kanji. We just had July 23rd. Small little thing there. ET. Yeah, no big deal. So we can click this one, and that'll be, okay, cool. Pop. Close it. Hey, look, a face. And the face happens to have a mouth. Hey, look, it all looks good. And so, yeah, you can just go one by one and do these. This one is, again, BUV, but all it has is one short thing after it. Some of these, let's see where we find it. Okay, here we go. No, it's the same. Yeah, like where was it? This one just ends in 4. So that's pretty easy to find. Like one kanji ends in 4. Some of these B, but lots of characters, and ends in UV. Like there are ways to find these. And then, like let's say you go through all of these B's and UVs and stuff. Well, then you notice, okay, well we've got these where they're really long, but let's say they have, can't see my own mouse. They have an underline at the middle, or let's say you find in here. Let me blow this up so you can probably see it better. Nope, that didn't help a darn thing. This is the character for hair. When it messes up, it doesn't mess up randomly. This character will always become the same thing. So if you can find this, where it's like B underscore hair color, then you have like, okay, let's see if we can figure out which one this is. Open texture. Well, I can see the actual texture files. So his hair is fairly blue. B underscore something something. Let's say, and usually it is 2 characters, so like weird O double dash for hair, and then EF for color. So let's double click that, update it. We'll just try it, see if it works. Boom. That looks like Gyu's hair, honestly. So these first 2 are probably hair. The O with the weird lines, probably the character for hair. So when I see this one, it's going to start with, that's right, weird O, and the whatever follows it, greater than, and it's going to have lots of characters, and then it's going to have an underscore, and then it's going to have a couple more characters. So we go in, we're looking for a PNG, but these are the spheres right here. Like these are textures, they look like pictures. These are spheres, they look like circles, except for this one, which is an I. Ends with 4. We saw that one earlier. So we're looking for OP. pick it because I lack anything better to call it. Oh, there we go. Lots of weird things, underscore a few weird things. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, as a matter of fact, it is this one. I don't really have to guess about that. I have enough experience to tell you, yes, that is going to be the correct thing. Being a sphere, you don't really see it. It just affects, again, how it looks, but not directly. But it has affected how light hits this. So if let me see, I'm going to shrink it again, so no worries there. But if I were to take all of this, I don't see how to do that. I'll make this easy. Let's throw a 1. Boom. You see how it changed? But then and then click out of it. Boom. So it kind of affects the shading and how the light, again, interacts with the hair. So it didn't change the color, didn't change anything except the lighting, or the shading, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so that's the correct version. So this is the section you're going to use. Again, mostly you're going to interact with these to correct them. That's one of the first things I ever learned to do in this program, was just add the color back to a character. And yeah, it's a lot of work, but yeah, I want to quit because I've already done GUI before. But the one I did is up here, right here. And really you can kind of look up images, Google images for the character, because for GUI, one of his texture files is for this arm of the howdy. And so you have to know like which side is the checkered on. And even in this one, it could be on the wrong side, to be honest. I probably looked it up at the time. Not entirely sure I looked it up, but yeah, I put the checkered side on his left and the maroon on his right, because I believe that's what the all-powerful Google told us. We've got his hair the way it was. We've got the eye color, which was a blue. So yeah, that I did have to color correct this one. And you just do it a piece at a time, and if you get it wrong, you get it wrong, because sometimes there's a little guesswork. But like I said, you use what you know. Like, hey, this one ends in _2, and face is just one character, so it's probably going to be 2 symbols. This one was a little bit more than 2, I guess, but, no big loss. So, yeah, and then, like, hair color, or, like, right howdy, left howdy, well, they both share howdy, so that's simple enough. Anything that's bottom has that first, has this first down character. Left is this first character right here, whereas right is the similar this character right here. So yeah, just it's kind of strategic, I guess, when there's a lot of materials like this guy. But you just go with it piece by piece until you get the whole thing done. And that's really what you're going to use by and large. Again, it's important to know how the stuff works with the vertices, the faces, the bones, the info on the model, joints, rigid bodies. But what you're probably going to use the most, especially at first, is this material thing to correct how it looks. So I did want to show you that. There's also an opaqueness and a reflection setting. Reflection is used mostly with effects, and I can kind of show you that. That'll be next lesson, level 3. Opaqueness is quite literally just, is it transparent or not? It's kind of a 1-0. You'll see partial values, but it's not important. And then edge just literally gives the object an edge. Like his nails have an edge right now and his hand doesn't. You can kind of tell. And then I turn it back on. Pow. So that's what the edge setting does, in case you're wondering. But yeah, so I guess that's pretty much all of level 2 is you know about materials and kind of the big problem on that one. You know how to look at it. And then you learn about the physics. So that's pretty much everything I cared to teach you about level 2. So Thank you for watching. Next time, level 3 will be back in MMD proper. Okay. So yeah, look forward to that. Bye!